Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to Drive Steady. My name is Andy, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing an Alfa Romeo 4C with the Spider top. Now this car is lightweight, mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, has a carbon fiber monocoque, but for some reason is the most unpopular sports car out there. In 2014, Alfa Romeo released the 4C in North America, and after some initial success, it's completely fallen off the map. Now forget about the fact that the 4C is probably not going to win a popularity contest. In this video, I'm going to give you a general overview and try and answer questions such as, does it have a character? Of course, is it fast? And lastly, but most importantly, does it put a smile on your face when you drive it? So I'm going to start off the review of the 4C by talking about the exterior, move to the interior, and wrap it up with the driving characteristics. But the first thing I want to talk about on the exterior are two design cues, more specifically this triangle or upside down triangle, for the lack of a better term, along with the Alfa Romeo crest. Now, I could probably make an entirely separate video just talking about these two things and how much history they represent for Alfa Romeo, but I'm going to cut it short by just saying the fact that I really like that Alfa Romeo continues to use this design cue in all of their modern cars. I really like it a lot. Now, flanking this upside down triangle are two air inlets, which looks like are feeding a upwards or downwards slope oil cooler or intercooler behind it. And moving up onto the hood, I didn't immediately notice this, but I feel like the hood shape is a mere reflection of the upside down triangle on the grille. You can see that the shape represents a triangle that leads directly into this upside down triangle on the front end of the car. And overall, the shape is very sloping and nice. It just screams like race car or F1 car. I really like the front end design. Now moving to the headlights here. If you're familiar with the European model, they came with this spider eyes looking headlight, which I'm not really a big fan of. The North American one came with these xenon lights, and they're housed in a carbon fiber piece, which I think look much better than the European version. And talking about the carbon fiber, there's a lot of carbon fiber on this car, as you'll see later on in the video, on the interior, on the mirror caps, on the rear end of the car. This thing is all about lightness as opposed to having the punch you in your face horsepower. But overall, wrapping up the exterior front end portion, I must say that the thing that surprised me the most is how wide the 4C is. Now it sits 75.3 inches in width, and it's 2 inches wider than a Porsche Cayman. But I must say, looking at it in person, I feel like the width is much bigger than the numbers represent on paper, and overall looks really good. So now I'm standing next to the Alfa Romeo 4C, and from this angle you could really tell that this car is on the smaller end. It's short in length, it's short in height, and me being someone who's 5'10", 5'11", I had a little bit of a hard time getting in and out of the car. Now that's not the reason why I'm standing next to the 4C. I wanted to give you one interesting design cue and talk about the wheels and the brakes. So let's move into that design cue. First things first, there are these air inlets on the side of the car. There's one on each side, and they feed these intercoolers that I could see here, guarded by a metal mesh piece. Now that's a nice piece. It's good that Alfa Romeo has it in metal and it's not in plastic and it's not flimsy. It looks like it's a nice high quality piece. Now the interesting design cue is down here. This piece is made out of carbon fiber. It's very nice to look at and it's a nice aesthetic, but it does serve a function. There is a transmission cooler that feeds this air inlet, or this air inlet feeds a transmission cooler. But the interesting part is that there's only one on this side. If you go look on the passenger side, this aesthetic piece or this functional piece does not exist. So that's the interesting part about this side design profile of the 4C. Now moving on, and let's talk about the wheels. They're very similar to the ones you find in the Giulia Quadrifoglio, and I believe they're sprinkled into the regular Giulias at this point as well. But I like them a lot. They're 18 by 7 in the front, 19 by 8.5 in the rear, so you've got a staggered setup. Inside the wheel barrel in the front, you have a 4-piston Brembo caliper that's painted red with the Alfa Romeo insignia, which is a great touch. I think it looks fantastic, biting onto a 12-inch rotor. On the rear, you have a single piston caliper and brake being bitten onto a 11.5-inch rotor. So it's nice that Alfa Romeo is giving you a nice brake size in the 4C. And you'll see later on in the driving portion that the 4C braking is actually on point and one of the better things about this car. Now, I don't know about you, but the exhaust sound coming from this 4-cylinder engine is the best I've heard from that engine configuration in quite some time. Now, let's move to the engine. But before I talk about the engine, I have to open the hood, right? So this is an interesting process in and of itself. I don't have anything on the key to open the hood. I don't have anything that I can use the key to open with. So I have to go to the side of the car. Inside the door panel here, there's a latch. I pull on this latch and opens the trunk. But another interesting thing about the trunk is that there are no struts to hold it open. Now, this is operated by a old school rod style system, but as you can see, this rod has been completely broken by the owner in some accident or whatnot. So I'm just gonna hold it open and talk about the engine. So the Alfa Romeo 4C's engine is a 1.75 liter inline 4-cylinder double overhead cam 16 valve engine, pumping out a healthy 347 horsepower and 258 foot-pounds of torque. Now remember, the Alfa Romeo 4C only weighs about 2,500 pounds, so the 237 horsepower and 258 pounds-feet of torque is plenty for this size and this weight of a car. The engine is a single scroll turbo and it's pumping out 21 pounds of boost. Yes, that's right, 21 pounds of boost. The engine is mated to a 6-speed double clutch transmission. Alfa Romeo claims 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, but several magazines have clocked it lower than that at 4.1 and some even at 4 seconds flat. So the 4C is definitely a fast car. Now moving to the interior portion of the 4C review, the first thing that you'll notice once you sit in here is that it's not a big space. It's very intimate. You sit very close to the passenger, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like I need more space. I don't feel like crunched up in here, given the size of the interior. Now moving along to the rest of the interior, the second thing you notice is just how much carbon fiber there is in this car. Now, the 4C has a carbon fiber monocoque. Basically, the cradle or the tub that you're sitting in is all carbon fiber, and that is typically kept for very high-end sports cars, hypercars, but the 4C has it in the $70,000 when new price range. So immediately you notice it here on the side sill, which is very wide, and then you notice it on the passenger side. There's more carbon fiber that I'm going to point out once I get to the rest of the interior, but that's the common theme. There is a lot of carbon fiber on this interior, given that it's designed very bare bones. Now, getting in and getting out is a little challenging because the short height of the 4C and me being 5'10", I found it a little more challenging to get out because of how wide the door sill is, but otherwise getting in is fairly easy. It's not as easy as a 4-door car or a bigger 2-door coupe, but it's not difficult or challenging. Now, once you get in, these seats are pretty comfortable. They're two-way adjustable. You can move forward or back, and it's all manual. And in addition to that, your backrest moves forward or back. It's a comfortable seat, even though it looks bare. It doesn't look like it has a lot of cushioning. When I was driving it around for about 20-30 minutes at a time, it felt fine. So the seat itself is covered in leather, and then the side bolsters here are covered in a cloth type material, which I think is great because these are the high wear areas. And when when leather gets worn, it looks ugly. So I'm glad Alfa Romeo did that. Otherwise, moving into the pedal box, this is one place that I was really surprised about. The gas and the brake pedals look lifted right off of a race car. They're aluminum, they have nice grips, they feel good, the brake pedal feels really good, the gas pedal feels really good. So I was really surprised and excited to see that, and aesthetically it looks great. Moving up to the steering wheel, it's a small diameter steering wheel, it's flat bottom. The interesting thing is underneath the bottom portion of the steering wheel, it's red leather stitching, but at the top it doesn't continue and it's black stitching. It's Alcantara at the top of the steering wheel, which is completely worn out at this point, but the rest of the steering wheel feels like it's leather. The center portion is plastic where your airbag is. In the center is your Alfa Romeo crest. The shifters, the paddle shifters, are mounted on the steering wheel and they're plastic. The reason why I bring that up is because I wish they were metal. In addition to that, some of the other Italian counterparts, I won't mention any names, believe that the paddle shifters should be column mounted as opposed to steering wheel mounted, so when you turn the wheel they stay in place. But I'm glad to see that in the Alfa Romeo they turn with you, so it's easier to shift. And then moving inside the steering wheel, the gauges. They're an LCD screen. Granted, they're from 2014, so it's not the crispest. It doesn't have the highest resolution, but it's functional and it's all digital. There are no analog gauges in the 4C. The nice thing about the gauge cluster is that it's surrounded by carbon fiber. The carbon fiber theme continues here as well. Then when you look down at the climate control vents, these are also carbon fiber. There's 4 of them. They look like fighter jets. I love the design. They look really, really cool. Now, one of the bigger complaints about the Alfa Romeo 4C's interior is the infotainment or the lack thereof. This is an Alpine unit. It's something you can probably walk into your local electronics store and find something newer and better. But I didn't really even find the need to turn the radio on given the exhaust noise and the driving experience. Then you come down to the climate controls. This is also another weak point. It looks very, very dated, and you can tell Alfa Romeo was really just going for functionality here. Just give me the ability to make it hot and cold and to blow air. Honestly, that's all you're getting from the climate control vents. And then coming down is where you're able to control your transmission. So 1 puts you in gear, N is neutral, R is for reverse, and then you've got another button here that's AM, which stands for automatic and manual modes for your transmission. The nice thing about this is that it's laid out very, very intuitively. Number 1 is facing forward, so you push that, you go forward. R is the one facing backwards, so you push R, you go in reverse. So that's intuitively laid out, and I like that a lot. And then you've got the drive mode selector. Alfa Romeo calls it the DNA switch. D stands for dynamic, N stands for neutral, A stands for all-weather mode. The all-weather mode pretty much dumbs it down, prioritizes safety, reduces throttle sensitivity, things like that, and feels natural. I think they named it perfectly. It's something you get into, it feels natural. The throttle response isn't too sharp, it isn't too dull, so I think it's perfect. And then you've got D, which stands for dynamic mode. This is the opposite of all-weather mode. It sharpens the throttle response, it sharpens the engine response, it feels more sporty. And then moving along, you have a manual handbrake. This is something I really like. A lot of manufacturers are going to the electronic handbrake, and this is nice to see, although it makes a really, really ugly sound. And I don't know what better way to describe it than ugly. Here, take a listen. I don't know, I don't like the sound of that. Or maybe it's just me. Anyway, the other thing to highlight in this car is you have a very, very limited to basically no storage space. You do not have a glove box. You do not have a center compartment. You have 2 cup holders. One of them is not even big enough to store a 16-ounce bottle of water. The other one is a little bigger and fits a regular sized bottle of water. But literally, the only storage space I was able to find in the interior of the 4C sits in between the 2 seats, and it's like a little box, and it's as tall as maybe a larger size iPhone and as wide as maybe 1.5 iPhones. So if you've got something to store, you're gonna put it in the trunk, and let me tell you, you don't have a lot of room in the trunk either. So the common theme here is that the 4C does not have a lot of storage space. And then the last piece I wanted to talk about, the interior, is obviously a highlight of this car, is that this is the Spider version, so the roof comes off. Now, it is a manual operated roof. There's 6 latches that you have to undo. There's 2 on the driver's side, 1 here and 1 on this side. And then there's 2 in the middle, which are these bolts that you twist open, which have the Alfa Romeo insignia on there, which is a really nice touch. And then again, you've got the same 2 on the passenger side, so 6 in total. And basically what happens is you undo these and you kind of fold up the top and you store it in the trunk because you pretty much don't have any room to store in the front. So that's pretty much the interior. I don't really have much else to say, and to put it in a nutshell, it's purpose built. There's a lot of carbon fiber if you're into that thing. The steering wheel is nicely laid out. The seating position is good. It's a smaller interior. It's intimate. The roof coming off is a bonus, but overall I feel like it's an adequate interior given the price point and the other technology that's in this car. All right, so now on to the driving portion of the 4C review. The first thing I want to talk about is the 4C, how you turn it on. It's not one of the keyless entry things where you come in and push button start. That doesn't exist here. It's a traditional key like so. There's a button on here with the Alfa Romeo crest that you push and the key pops open like this. And you've got a traditional keyhole that you put the key in, push your foot on the brake, and unlock the wheel, of course, and here we go. Start the car, fires up. I must say the exhaust, while it's idle, isn't the greatest sounding exhaust. It does kind of have that lawn-mower-y feel. Let me close the window. Okay, turn the AC on so I don't suffocate to death. So before getting on the road, the visibility out front is actually extremely good. The hood drops down completely and I can see everything around me, in front of me, in my peripherals. Everything is good. The only negative side is the visibility out the side. When I look over my shoulder here, there's a humongous structural piece that feeds into the trunk or the hood for the 4C, and I really have to look over my shoulder to see everything back there, making it more important for me to adjust my mirrors properly. Same thing goes on this side. It's not as bad on the driver's side. I can look over, I can see everything because this B-pillar is not way back, but it's back enough or further back enough for me to be able to see. All right, the other thing that I guess I'm going to talk about once I get going here, let me put it in 1 and we're off. The thing is that the Alfa Romeo 4C has manual steering. Yes, that's right, this car has manual steering. So the result of manual steering is when you're going at low speeds like this in a parking lot, or when you're at a complete stop like I'm coming to now, the wheel is extremely heavy to turn. So that's one thing that I want you to be conscious of. This is not even hydraulic steering, this is just complete manual steering. So that's one thing that you should expect from the 4C. Now once you're going, I don't know if you can tell, the exhaust does sound better than what it does sound like at idle, and I do hear a lot of exhaust noise being pumped into the cabin, and it is natural exhaust noise. I can feel it. It's not something that's coming through the speakers. I could hear it behind me, and of course the natural appeal of the mid-engine is having that engine behind you. So here I go, pulling out. Actually, let me go out this way and turn around so I can get you guys a really quick pull. Make sure nobody's there. All right, let's turn around. Here we go. So you guys can get a nice dose of what this thing sounds like. Dynamic mode on, nobody behind me, nobody in front of me. Here we go, full throttle. Turbo lag. Yeah, it's pretty quick. I would say it's pretty quick. It's not blisteringly fast, but it's definitely quick. It's not gonna knock your socks off. My personal feeling, I don't know if this is biased or not, but my Shelby GT350 feels faster than that off the line, but it's not a slow car by any means. And of course, this car is not really meant to be a straight line blaster anyway. The next thing is the transmission. So the one weird thing about the transmission, you can operate it in automatic and manual mode, but when you have it in automatic mode like I do now, it'll shift by itself, obviously, and when I want to shift up, I can certainly do that. It'll switch to manual mode when I pull on the paddles, but it'll automatically switch back to auto mode like within 2 or 3 seconds. I can't figure out why. Other cars, typically when you have it in automatic mode and you pull the paddle, it'll switch to manual mode for, I don't know, about 5 or 10 seconds, and then once it realizes that you're not doing anything, it'll switch back to automatic mode. But even before I'm able to shift into another gear, the transmission shifts into automatic shifting mode. Anyway, talking about the transmission, it's a double clutch 6-speed, and it feels every bit of a double clutch. It doesn't feel like an automatic. On initial launch, there is a little bit of a delay as the clutches are engaging inside the transmission. The shifts are very fast. Now, the next thing I want to talk about are the driving modes. So when I'm driving in natural, it feels totally fine. The throttle response is good and everything feels natural. This is something that you would use on a day-to-day driving mode. But when you switch it into dynamic mode, I can definitely feel the throttle response gets sharper. So I guess the consensus here is the driving modes do make a difference. Next, let's talk about the engine. And I love the fact that it's sitting right here behind me and I can hear it when I'm driving quickly. Here we go. I think I'm going to be able to get on it here really quickly. Let me downshift into first. Here we go. I shifted into second and I'm going almost way above the speed limit. Now you go ahead and comprehend that, but the gearing is pretty short, so it makes the engine feel very snappy, but I think the engine is still very snappy. You can hear the blow-off gate noises, the whoosh whoosh as you're driving, and the engine is going full blast and giving you all of its power. Here we go. Let me do another one here. And the exhaust bangs and crackles you get in between the shifts are very satisfying. They sound really, really good, and it makes it feel like you're almost in something more expensive. And I don't know of a better way to describe it, but the Alfa Romeo 4C feels more expensive than it actually is. Moving along, as far as driving character and driving enjoyment, and does it put a smile on your face? I think it does. I think, yeah, it's definitely a fast car, and it handles extremely well. If you want the go-kart feeling in a lightweight body, get this car. This is a fantastic car for that type of experience. But the smile on your face factor is there. It's not, it would have been better if there's a manual transmission, but the way the engine is behind you and the way that turbo spools up, get that turbo kick, that really puts a smile on your face and makes the driving experience worth it, I guess. But this is a fun car. If you're on the fence and you're looking for a fun weekend car that you can somewhat putt around, it's not really good at doing that, but if you're looking for something that you can canyon carve and really feel like you're driving, I mean, the steering is bang on and the suspension is good. Even though the suspension is firm, I can feel that it's firm. It doesn't beat me up in that it's so firm that it's breaking my back. So overall, my thoughts. I think this is a fantastic car. Does it have issues? Yes, the visibility is not the best. The technology or the infotainment is probably lacking. And the storage space, for me, it's not that big of a deal, but for those of you that are big into storage, they put it into automatic mode. This car has very, very little storage, but the plus sides, this thing handles like it's on rails. You can feel that it is a very lightweight car. The power is spot on. I think it's perfect for the amount of weight this car has. So if that's what you're after, and it does have the looks are good. I've gotten several compliments throughout my day of driving this car. So if you're into that type of thing, and if you're into suspension, steering, really driving the car, this is a good car to get. So as I come to a stop here, I'm gonna wrap up the video. Those are kind of my thoughts on the 4C. If I didn't answer any questions you might have, please send me a comment down below and I will try and get to you as quickly as possible. But thank you for watching this video, and till next time, drive steady.